Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, monomili wanji, namaste, jambo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We are coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We're so delighted and so honored that you are joining us in our mission to help families grow closer through reading. We hope that you will subscribe to the show in the iHeartRadio app on Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, Himalaya, Ghana, wherever you find your podcast. Our guest today is Kerry Gallagher. She's returning to the show to talk to us about how we can gauge our kids' digital wellness. Before we invite Kerry into the studio, we want to invite you to connect with us digitally on social media, facebook.com/readingwithyourkids, at Reading With Your Kids on Instagram, at Jedley Magic on Twitter. Be sure to check out our Reading With Your Kids Pinterest page. Rumor has it we'll be coming to TikTok. We're not quite sure what we're going to be doing there. Dancing, I don't think, is going to be one of the things we'll be doing there, but we'll see. You know, you can let us know. You can go to readingwithyourkids.com. You can click on the contact button at the top of the page to let us know what we're doing right. Let us know what we could be doing better. Let us know who you'd like to hear in the show. And also, let us know what you think we should be doing on TikTok. And, you can also sign up for our free newsletter. We are revamping it. It is going to be amazing. Do all of that and more at readingwithyourkids.com. Join us right now from the beautiful state of Massachusetts. We are excited to welcome back our friend. She's here to talk to us today about digital wellness. Please welcome back to the show, Kerry Gallagher. Hey, Kerry, how are you?
Hi, Jed. Thanks for having me again. I've been looking forward to this conversation.
I'm looking forward to it too, because, you know, we talk a lot about how reading, how the many ways that reading with our kids benefits our kids. Now kids are being immersed into the world of technology, and it's really important for us to be talking to our kids about how to use technology appropriately, safely for them, and respectfully. So you're the expert in this area. Why don't you start us off? What's the first thing parents need to be aware of, do you think?
Sure. So I think this conversation, it's important that parents have an open channel of conversation with their children about technology use. And I compare it to nutrition, right? So we talk to our kids all the time about what they're choosing to put in their bodies or how they're choosing to move their bodies. Similarly, what they're putting into their brains, right, via technology is just as important. So I think parents just need to first keep in mind that having an open line of communication, this is a daily conversation. This is not just the conversation that you have when something goes awry, because it will, because they're kids and that's part of what they do. They push boundaries, they try things out. And it's a part of growing up to make mistakes. And that's why they have adults to guide them. Additionally, I would say the next important thing is that parents should be open to having an ongoing conversation with their child's school about how technology is used there and the values that the school communicates about technology use, so that all of the adults who kind of surround the child are providing that learner with consistent messages about the values that we hold as a community and how those values apply to our technology use. So the tech use in itself is not really any different than a lot of other conversations we have with our children about the decisions that they make that could influence their relationships, their bodies, their emotions, a lot of things.
I think that's really important for us to remember, is that our kids are actually consuming media. And they're exposed to literally thousands and thousands of messages every single day through media, through billboards, through music, movies, gaming, what they're doing online. And it does have an effect on our emotions, on the way we think. And I think it transfers to our physical health, too.
It does. And actually, the topic that we had discussed prior to recording was digital wellness. And I really divide digital wellness into 4 distinct areas of wellness. So one is actually our physical bodies, because how we use technology can have an impact on our physical wellness. So a couple of examples of this that come up a lot in the work I do with parents: the influence on blue light on our ability to sleep. And also the influence on blue light on our eye health. So like eye twitches and some of those other things that can happen when we're on screen too much. That's an example of physical wellness. Another is if we end up kind of binge watching or binge playing games or binge scrolling, and we find that our bodies are sedentary for a long period of time because we've binged media, that has an influence on our physical wellness. So it doesn't mean it's wrong to do that sometimes. It's just that shouldn't be the habitual way that we use our waking hours, because we need to move our bodies to keep them healthy. Mm-hmm. So that's another example of physical wellness when it comes to how our digital use affects it. Just a quick rundown. The other 3 areas that I divide digital wellness into besides physical wellness is cognitive wellness, which is that thinking part, emotional wellness, which is our feelings and moods, and then community wellness. And that has to do with our relationships, whether it's at school or in our family or with our friends. And also, how is it that we are using our influence and messages online to make the communities that we are a part of better?
I love that idea that we can start talking to our kids about using the tools in our lives to make our communities better, to help build those connections with each other. Can you talk a little bit more about that and ways that we can encourage our kids to do that?
Sure. So I can give you some examples, because I think when I talk to audiences, it's fine to talk about the research and the theory, which I have plenty of, but people are more interested in the application. Like, what does this actually look like with my children? So a really great example of this came up this fall with the TikTok challenges that students were enacting in schools, right? So if you're not familiar and you're listening, which would be interesting because it was all over the news, right? Students were actually vandalizing school bathrooms because it was a challenge that went viral on TikTok, which is a social media platform where users share videos and music and a lot of other things. So my question to some of the schools that I've worked with and the students that I've worked with and the parent groups who have come to me with this concern is, when something like that happens again, because it will, right? And it may not be on this TikTok platform. A lot of people are eager to demonize the platforms, but it could be something that goes viral in Instagram stories, or it could be something that goes viral, on Twitter. It could really be anywhere, or Reddit, or any other platform that our children are engaged in. When that happens again, how will our children know how to respond if we haven't talked about how our values as a school community or our values as a family would demand that we act on something like that? So do our values demand that we just choose not to engage and we scroll past it? Do our values demand that we actually speak up and say something about, this is wrong and this is not what I want for my community, and I expect that my friends and other members of my community will not engage in something like this, and I'm going to actually say something, right? I think the mistake that a lot of adults made when that trend went viral and started actually happening is that the adults didn't talk about it until they were reacting to it happening. So there was no proactive or preemptive conversation, because they were worried that if they talked about it, they would be planting the idea in the kids' heads for some reason. And that's counteractive, because believe me, they already know about it. Just assume that they know. Mm-hmm. Talk about, hey, I know this thing is happening at other schools. I want you to know that I love our school and I want you to love it too. And in order for this to be a place that we love and feel safe coming to every day, we need to commit to continuing to make it be somewhere that's safe, that people can actually use the facilities without worrying what it will be like when they get there, and that we can be proud that we rose above this destructive trend as a community. And in order to do that, I want to partner with you to figure out how we can make sure that we take those positive steps forward. So that's a really great example of how you can apply that idea of digital wellness to the way you're interacting with adolescents.
Yeah. one of the things we've talked a lot about here on the podcast is just reading with your kids is such a powerful way to share our values. And like you said, the time to start having these conversations, it's not when the issue has already arrived. It's preemptively. It's from the time they're little kids, and you're not necessarily talking to a 3-year-old about not taking drugs or engaging in violence or messing up the school bathroom, but you're talking to them about respecting their bodies and making healthy choices about their bodies and making healthy choices about the community, and saying something when the mean duck in the story that you're reading to your 3-year-old is doing something mean and destroying somebody's property. These are the things that we can have those ongoing conversations with our kids about.
Yeah, Jed, one of the things that I was thinking as you were talking is that I really enjoy reading with my kids, even though they're 10 and 13 and not just 3 anymore. But sometimes that reading might be actually like scrolling through social media together and reading the captions or the comments and processing it together. And, you know, thinking about, like, if this was a comment on something I posted, how might it make me feel and how might I react? And since it isn't on something that I've posted, but it's on like a friend's post, what can I do to support that friend? Or what can I do to, you know, let that person who commented know what it makes me feel? You know, I think just like the stories with physical pages that we read help us process potential upcoming interactions that we're going to have with others, the stories that we see unfolding online can help us process with our children the interactions that they may have in the future as well.
Yeah, so important. And I also wanted to touch base on that idea that parents, they don't want to bring it up because I don't want to put this thought in my kid's brain. I've been hearing about this, you know, doing character education programs in schools for over 30 years. First it was alcohol and drugs and smoking and bullying. It's, you know, there are so many parents, I don't want to talk about that with my kids because I don't want to give them the idea. If they don't hear about it, they're not going to think about it. They're not going to get involved with it. Like you said before, they've already heard it, so you have to talk to them about it. I had a neat experience with my daughter when she was in 8th grade. That was the year the Jersey Shore came out. And we used to watch a lot of TV together and talk about it. And I was taking a media literacy course at the time. And the one thing that the course really stressed is don't try to ban anything that your kids are interested in. Experience it with them together. Talk about it. So my daughter started seeing these commercials for this crazy show. And my first thought was, no way. And then I thought, well, let me put this into action and see if this class is right. We sat down and we watched the show. Some of it was horrifying. Some of it was, you know, made me laugh. And then I was, you know, I felt bad that I was laughing about this really inappropriate behavior in front of my daughter. But then we had a conversation afterwards. And I said, what did you think? And she said, well, this was funny and that was funny. I goes, what do you think about the people? What do you think? Do you think Snoopy, how do you think she feels about herself? Oh, she has absolutely no respect for herself at all, because if she did, she wouldn't let them do this and this and this. And I thought, this is a really great way to have these conversations. I don't need to say anything about this. She already knows the lesson.
Yeah, I think the other thing is that if you're worried about putting the idea, let's say that your assumption is right as a parent and that they actually haven't thought about that topic before, wouldn't you rather them process it for the first time with your guidance than without? So even if they haven't heard about it before, you being the one who introduces it to them really doesn't do harm. It in fact readies them for when they hear about it again, or for the first time, like in a context where you're not available. So just another brief story, like I've already started to talk to my 10-year-old about alcohol and drinking and drugs, and she's only 10. She's in 4th grade. Does she have classmates who are introducing her to drugs and alcohol? Absolutely not. I know. For sure, because there's always supervision with her friend visits and all of that. Number one, because of COVID. Number two, because she's 10. So I think I'm proud of the fact that she's already able to talk about that topic. And also when it comes to technology and the application of that, I think, Jed, you and I have talked about this before. I started giving my children their own devices when they were very, very young on purpose. And they were devices that were specifically designed for young children with like parent dashboards and parent oversight. And then I've been gradually releasing control of some of the features little by little as they've gotten older, as we've built open lines of communication, as we've built trust. And when and if they violate that trust, we'll continue that conversation and there may be consequences. Great example. My children were with my parents overnight last night. One of my children wanted me to extend the time she has to use her phone. So she FaceTimed me to ask me, and I asked why she needed that. Her reason didn't really qualify based on our previous agreements. And so I said, no, I'm sorry. Instead, I would rather that you get ready to go to bed, right? Because this is the time. Mm-hmm. And she was like, all right. Right. It wasn't a big fight because we have this open line of communication. She knows the initial reasons for those guidelines. She knows she can ask, and she knows I might say yes and I might say no. And instead she went to brush her teeth and went to bed.
For her. Good for her.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, one of the things, as we were talking about this, I'm thinking, I've never met a parent who was afraid to tell their kids not to go near the stove because they were afraid they were going to put the idea in their head, or not to play with an electrical outlet. You know, it was those kind of things. It's like, yeah, we don't want our kids to get hurt. Same thing applies.
Great point.
Yeah. And one of the things, and this just came up this morning. There was a story in the news. I don't have all the details, but in a very affluent community, the community's up in arms because somebody at the middle school used technology to spread a hateful or a racist message. Mm. How can we talk to our kids? Because I think a lot of times when that happens, I don't know if middle school kids are necessarily engaged in thoughtful hate, and I want to do this to make to spread fear, or make people feel uncomfortable. I think a lot of times it's just dopes, kids making dopey decisions. But how can we talk to our kids about that, making sure that we use technology respectfully to make everybody feel respected and valued?
Sure. I think in this circumstance that you're talking about, it's important to note that every child is different, and the intentions behind a post like that could be different in any situation. Mm-hmm. So us assuming that it was a stupid mistake versus us assuming that it was rooted in hate versus us assuming that somebody hit the publish button or the post button by mistake, like any of those could be true, or all of them could be true. We really don't know. Mm-hmm. One thing that's important is that we give children an opportunity to learn from those mistakes, and that child is not identified publicly in the news, and then that there's any kind of venom or targeting of that particular student. It's an unfortunate mistake, and that child needs an opportunity to process that mistake with the right people, with his or her parents, school counselors, school deans or assistant principals. There needs to be both like a counseling and a discipline layer to this. And there need to be some longer term consequences and structures put in place for this child to support them so that they don't make the same mistake in the near future. And that they have the opportunity to learn from it. At the same time, when something like this happens, we need to support the students and families who may feel targeted and unsafe as a result of what was said. So if it was something targeting race or gender or age or anything that is associated with somebody's identity and it produces unsafe feelings, as a community, we need to make sure we support those individuals as well. This is an opportunity for the families in that community to talk to their children about all of those elements. Like, if you see something like this online in the future, it's important for you to consider not only how it might make your community feel, that's that community wellness, part of digital wellness, but how it might affect an individual's emotions, the emotional wellness of an individual who might feel targeted by that post. Even if the intention isn't to target that person, intentions versus impact, right? The impact could still have that effect. And it's also important to really engage that bit of cognitive wellness and have them practice thinking about those potential consequences before posting things or even before sending an email. Mm-hmm. An email may not be public, but it could have a similar impact on the person or the persons who are receiving it if we're not careful.
Yeah, yeah. We talk to our kids, especially athletes. I know your daughters are very athletic. Mm-hmm, and you work at a school with a long tradition of very competitive sports teams. I coached and attended a rival high school. We teach our athletes and our performers to be thoughtful of all of the actions that they're taking out on the field and to think through things. I think the same is so important with our kids when they're using technology. We need to get them to be aware, be intentional with the way that they use technology.
Yeah, if you want to, use athletics as a metaphor, think of the communities that you're a part of as your team. Mm-hmm. And when you're a member of a team, you feel very loyal to that group and you wouldn't want to do anything to potentially put the team's performance at risk. And so you're going to take care of yourself. You're going to practice in your yard. You're going to do whatever you can do to strengthen your team. Similarly, if you think of your school community or your family as your team, what you decide to post online or how you can communicate with others online could actually have a negative or positive impact on that team, on that community. And so you can be proactive and do things that show the good parts and the accomplishments and the hard work and the learning that you're a part of to really benefit your team or your community if you choose. And that can be done online in the digital space. You have that power. And every child who's engaged in the digital space has that power. I think one of the great things about social media is that it has provided opportunities for student and child agency to give our adolescents more ability to have a voice in what their lives are like day to day. I think adolescents are clamoring to have some ability to manage their own lives and their own time, and because they don't have a lot of power over their own lives, this is an opportunity that they have to do that, and they can use it in a very positive way.
Yeah. I think that's right. One of the things I wanted to ask you about is, different nations are taking different approaches to this. Mm-hmm. And we've hosted a lot of kids in our home, a lot of international kids in our home from China. And I know in China, they're also very concerned in the way the kids are using technology, and they're putting in very strict limits, governmental limits, where, if you're under 14, your technology goes off at a certain hour, and you can only use it for so long, and you can only scroll for so many times. What do you think about that? Do you think that that's something that we should be doing here, or you think that that's just the wrong way to go and that we should be putting more control in our kids' hands?
Are you referring to like universal controls versus the controls that parents choose to put in place as part of their conversations with their children?
No, I'm talking what's happening in China is universal. It's
Yeah. So I do think, as I mentioned in my response to your question about the school community that's dealing with an unfortunate post online, every child is unique, mm-hmm. and every child's ability to manage their own emotions and behaviors and actions are different and are in a different place. And so I don't think universal anything is a good solution for any children under any circumstances. A universal diet of food, a universal requirement for sleep, a universal amount of homework, even for the children sitting in the same classroom or the children in the same family. Like my two children, it is what, one daughter has at age 10 is different than the older daughter had at age 10 because they are different people. So universal anything, whether it comes to tech or not, I am not a fan of, especially as someone who's worked with adolescents for a career for the last 20 years. They're just all so different. And that's what I love about working with them. And I think that's what those of us who are parents love about being parents, is that each of our children is so individual and we love them in such different ways. So any universal solution is just not going to work to help that individual be their best selves or use technology in the best ways to serve their interests and passions and to help them build connections and all the great things that tech can do.
Yeah. And the way that they can maximize that is with our help and our support.
Mm-hmm. And our guidance.
Yeah.
And sometimes that might mean consequences, but other times it might mean encouragement.
Yeah. We live in an age where kids just have this technology. They're literally, a kid in middle school can create a podcast that is literally heard around the world. And that is what an exciting time we live in.
I agree.
Kerry, I know that we're only scratching the surface and that you have a lot of resources that parents can tap into. Please tell everybody where to go to learn more about you and find out about those resources, please.
Sure. So I would just close by mentioning digital wellness is really divided into these 4 categories that I talk about: physical, cognitive, emotional, and community. If you're interested in learning more about this, or if you're interested in talking with me so that I can join your community, whether it be a parenting group or a school, or whether it be a group of faculty or students, and I've worked with all of those different audiences, you can find me by emailing me at Kerry Hawk, KerryHawk02@yahoo.com. You can also find me on Twitter at KerryHawk02, on Instagram at KerryHawk02. You can DM me if you prefer that over emails in any of those locations. One of the things I really enjoy with these conversations is customizing that digital wellness framework approach to specific communities based on their needs, or specific families based on their needs. Because as we mentioned with the one-size-fits-all approach to digital limits, it just doesn't work to have a stock answer for everybody. What works best is to talk about the children that you serve, the concerns that you have, and figure out a path forward that isn't a solution. It's a journey that you're committing to and an approach that you're going to walk with alongside the children that you care for.
Yeah. I like that. I think that's so important to just remind folks. You're not just going to push a button and solve this. It's parenting is an ongoing process. I started my parenting journey 29 years ago, and I'm looking forward to continuing it for at least 29 or 30 more years.
Yeah, agreed. I saw a meme on social media today that I especially liked, and it said, I saw a woman comforting her newborn, and she said, "It's okay. I'm learning too. We're only on day 8. And then the meme said, 20 years in, I'm still learning right alongside my children as well. And I think that's the key. It's a journey, and we're all on it, but we're not in it alone. Thank goodness we have each other.
Absolutely. We've had a great time speaking about digital wellness with our guest, Kerry Gallagher. Hey, Kerry, thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it, Jed. Good to see you again.
Please be sure to join us for the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be Erica Budd. She'll be here to celebrate the Travel Rangers series mission to Australia. That's the next episode of the podcast. Hey, if you're the author of a fantastic children's book, please be sure to visit readingwithyourkids.com. You can click on the author's Click Here button at the top of the page, find out how you can be a guest on the podcast, find out how you can submit your book to our Certified Great Read panel, and also find out all about our monthly promotion program. We can celebrate your book with commercials here in the podcast, with messages to our 75,000 plus social media followers, and also display your book in our nationwide network of digital pedestrian billboards. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Speaking of digital, we want to thank our guest who told us all about how we can gauge our kids' digital wellness, Kerry Gallagher. Also want to thank my team, Fatima Khan, Rory Grady, Skylar Strauss. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.